Okay, so I've started recording just just so everybody knows. Jack, you have inadvertently shared your screen.
I don't have anything. I've got something on the right side, but I don't have anything across the top.
All right, so I just
I just had part
I
of
think
it.
I took over the sharing just so that Jack doesn't have to worry about it.
Somehow I've been blotted out.
Yeah, I've been logged out too. What's going on?
Well, I see you're all in the meeting. I think what you're seeing now is just my screen.
Do you see the agenda in front of you guys?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, you're
I
seeing
have.
Robert's screen, that's all.
Okay.
Okay, so let me call the April Atherton Rail Committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Robert, may I have the roll call?
Sure. Chair Kay,
Here.
Vice Chair Mulbach. Think you may be muted, John.
I'm here.
All right.
I mean, I'm not real close, but I'm here.
Okay. Jack Ringham,
Here,
right? Greg Conlon. Not on yet. Jim Jans. Paul Jones.
Yes.
Jim Massey.
Here,
Okay, and I think our council member liaison is not on yet. So we will continue on.
Okay. Item 2 is public comments. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? And if you are here to make a public comment, you can, I guess, raise your hand, or all the mics are on, correct? So I guess people can speak.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think we have one member of the public, Ophelia. Did you want to say anything for anything not on the agenda?
No, I just listening.
Okay.
Okay. So let's move on to item 3, approval of minutes. So this is from the December 1st meeting last year. And are there any member comments for corrections or changes for that set of minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approving the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
so
so
moved.
moved.
Okay.
Okay. Chair, you want to tell me who you got on that one?
I heard Jim first, and I think Jack next.
Okay, so we'll take Jim as the motion, and then Jack, do you mind being the second?
I'm the second.
All right.
So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, unanimous approval. No presentations today, so let's move on to item 5, regular agenda. So the first one will be an update on the Atherton Caltrain station closure.
Okay, so I'm going to start it off. We do have Brent Tijan and David Pape from Caltrain on the meeting as well. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen at this point in time and just provide a brief update. I mean, we've been working fairly closely with Caltrain to get things rolling on the transition for the station. And there have been some significant activities that I'm hoping you all are aware of. On the side, we've been working, there's a 3-party funding agreement that is currently in process to provide the town with the $400,000 that was promised us for station area improvements and looking into the alternative access route. So that is a 3-party agreement between Caltrain, or sorry, the JPB, the town, and the Transportation Authority, who's actually providing the money. So that's in process. Caltrain has installed the greater majority of the safety fencing. that starts at the near the Fair Oaks Crossing, extends the full length of the platform, and is pretty close to Maple. There's still a couple of items there that are pending. One is the 90-degree tie-in to the existing fence at Station Lane in Maple. And this week I met with their, guess he's the maintenance supervisor who's taken on some of the activities there, and pointed out to him the gap in the fence at Maple. And he agrees that it's a safety concern, and we'll be looking at least putting in a panel of chain link or welded wire fencing to close that gap there that was used for access by the fencing contractor.
Okay.
Um,
That's Atherton's doing that, not Caltrain.
No, Caltrain.
Caltrain's doing that. Okay. Okay.
And so that's a safety issue. He recognizes that that's a straight opening out to the active rail corridor. So we're hoping that they'll be able to take care of that in the not too distant future. And then I'll turn it over to Brent. Do you want to highlight some of the other activities that are ongoing, Brent?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So Brent Tejan, Government and Community Affairs for Caltrain. Yeah, as Robert mentioned, most of the permanent fence is installed along the platform. On the platform, or the platform demo side of things, that's the centerboard platform that's currently there. The contractor subcontract has been issued to Granite to start demoing the platform. We expect that work to start in early May, be complete by June 1st, which was outlined in the original MOU with the town. Just some other minor things, the bike lockers and old wooden fence have been removed, and the town's contractor has already moved the fence towards the tracks and can start utilizing that area. And as Robert mentioned, he met with our staff earlier this week to talk about some more minor issues to complete the turnover of the rest of the station. For the other issue, which is the Watkins Avenue grade crossing improvement, we're currently working with our contract team to issue a formal work directive for design work for that project. We expect them to be on board within the next 5 to 6 weeks. Once we have a designer on board, we'll start the conceptual design and the planning process with conceptual design and final design complete by summer of 2022. We would then start to procure a contract for the actual construction of the work. We would expect construction to start in spring of 23 and be complete by the end of 2023, which is again outlined in the MOU. Lastly, as Robert mentioned, the three-party agreement is still being worked on between all the three parties, and we're moving forward on that progress. And on the line is with me as well, but we're happy to answer any questions. And if you have questions for staff that's not here, we're happy to get back to you and get that information to Robert.
Are there any questions from the committee members? Hearing none.
We have a couple of physical hands raised.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So
I
there's
just hope-
John
I
and
just-
Paul.
Thought people would speak out, but go ahead.
I think Paul raised his hand first, so Paul, why don't you go to it?
You'll have to unmute, Paul.
Could you give us an update on the constant warning time system that you're developing?
I think that's under the Caltrain electrification project.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Robert, you have an item later today. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
we have an item later on to cover the general update on Caltrain items. Caltrain's here today to talk about the station closure. And we had Caltrain talking about the other items at a previous meeting. I can try and give a little bit of information under the upcoming topic, and anything that we need else we can request from Caltrain to provide.
Fine, I can be patient.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are obviously our public board meetings that information gets presented to on a somewhat regular basis. So.
Brent, when the platform is taken out, which you say is going to happen in the next 6 weeks or so, what's left behind? How do they finish it off?
Yeah, for most of the place, they'll just fill it with ballast, which is a big rock along the corridor. And I imagine that will be what they do with that as well, just fill it with ballast. People can't walk on it easily, and the pedestrian crossings will be removed as well and filled with ballast.
I don't think my view gets, I can see the hands going up. So are there any other hands, Robert, that people have raised?
I don't see any, but Jack's camera's a little blurry, so I don't.
Oh,
My
you
hand's
mean,
not
actually you have to, oh, those hands, not the actual,
Yeah.
okay, not the Zoom hands up. Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Do you want
Hearing,
to ask Ophelia if she has any?
yeah,
questions?
I'll open it up for public comment or questions. Ophelia, did you have a question or comment?
I just got the new information, so I need thinking about it. So I'm not putting comment today. Thank you
Okay.
for giving me the chance.
No problem. Is there any discussion for the committee members who want to talk about on this topic? I have to change the view to go through everyone's.
I don't see.
Okay.
anybody.
Okay, so seeing none, thank you guys, Brent and David.
Yeah, and thank you all, and we're really appreciative of the town support on this project and the committee support as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
see, moving on to item 5B, the Fair Oaks Avenue Quiet Zone filing.
Yeah, so this is a carryover from last meeting. We didn't have an opportunity to discuss. Every 4.5 to 5 years, the town is required to file with the FRA, basically an update filing regarding existing quiet zones. And so wanted to let you know that we did file. I mean, the quiet zone was enacted approximately 4.5 years ago. And so we did do our update filing, and it confirmed the status of the crossing and the associated safety measures that are in place. We did get one request back from the analyst at the FRA requesting a signature on a piece of paper. So we provided that and haven't heard anything from them since then. So we're assuming all is in order with regards to our quiet zone and maintaining it.
Is there, how will we know for sure? Is there a document that they publish, or they just
maintain
don't
it.
come back and then you?
Well, they maintain a database online of all quiet zones, and as long as we're registered in there, then we're good.
Okay. Do the committee members have any questions?
Jacqueline, I have a comment. It's Fair Oaks Lane, not Fair Oaks Avenue. Fair Oaks Avenue is a street that runs perpendicular to Marsh Road that starts about halfway down the Atherton's Marsh Road border and runs towards Redwood City. It's a different street than Fair Oaks Lane, so we ought to keep them separated.
Thank you, Jack. I apologize for the typo.
Any other comments?
I have one comment, I guess. I think on balance, Caltrain observes the quiet zone pretty well. But there are, frankly, a couple of trains, and whether I would characterize these as road conductors or what exactly, that do not observe it and continue to blow the horn. These are largely northbound trains who blow the horn well after the train has cleared Watkins Avenue. Is there any recourse? I mean, should we be complaining to Caltrain or the FRA or, you know, some guy in the bushes. I don't know. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it sort of is annoying.
There is a way to file a violation. I think you can do it individually. I've seen the website for it. I'll send, it's a little off topic, but I'll connect with you, John, offline, and I'll show it to you. In terms of whether there's any recourse, that's another question, but there's a way to report violations.
Well, but that's a pretty formal thing you're describing. I don't know.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I do on occasion.
But is there, I mean, we have contacts with Caltrain. Isn't there some way to get to somebody and say, hey, knock it off?
I'm going to say it is off topic. I will say that I do have occasional conversations with Caltrain when it comes up. The one comment that I will have is that there is periodic activity in terms of work in the corridor. And so when they are working, that is something that happens. But there are, to say, your comment, John, is not one that I haven't heard before.
Okay.
Any public comments? Any other committee comments? If not, I guess we'll move on to 5C, the Caltrain general update.
Okay, well, I'll kick it off. With regards to Caltrain, there's, as you know, things have changed a bit over the last few months in terms of ridership and other activities, changes in the pandemic, et cetera. They are seeing a little bit of a ridership increase, is my understanding. But they are not as of yet. I'm going to say, I think that they're also changing they've either changed or are changing their timing to better sync up with BART up at Millbrae. And so there've been some timing changes on their schedule. With regards to the electrification project, there's been some activity preceding the previous meeting wherein they were putting in some communication conduits up near the Fair Oaks Lane crossing. They haven't been around in a little while. We anticipate that they will come back at some point to finish off some work with relation to the communication conduits, some stuff associated with the communication shelter, as well as
They actually need to build the shelter.
they need to build the
been kind of in
shelter.
this unbuilt state for months.
There are, I think, a couple of foundations that they still need to install in various locations, and they haven't started yet to stand the poles. But I think the priority in terms of use of that right of way is going to be given to the previous topic related to the station closure and removing that center platform.
Yeah, just to tack on to the ridership, at least the February ridership is still down 95% year over year, although there were I think a few markers going up a little bit, but not much because they measure the ridership in a number of ways, but it's still down significantly throughout about the same throughout the COVID era.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robert.
The other couple of things that I will mention is that they are going to be receiving some federal aid funds through the recent relief bill. And we shared an article with regards to upcoming changes in government governance and the discussions that are ongoing. And I believe there's 3 different avenues of governance changes that they're looking at, but they haven't decided which direction they're headed yet.
Yeah, they're supposed to conclude in December with a recommendation that they'll vote on for what governance change they want. So it'll be this year they decide what will be their new structure, if it's going to just be minor changes or something as major as perhaps merging with BART or another regional entity. That's what they're discussing right now. quite a few politics in there. So, and of course, money's a discussion as part of it too. So we'll see what happens with that.
And then my last comment is to try and answer Paul's comment from the previous section. They provided that presentation at the last meeting that we held with regards to the advanced detection of the trains, at that being a 2-speed system. And it's my understanding that that's been accepted by the FRA. But I don't know if there's any, Paul, did you have any more information or any specific
No,
questions?
no, I don't have any more information. I'm just concerned about the problem because when I read their approach, it didn't seem to address what I think is the key issue, how to ensure that the downtime is properly managed.
Okay. Well, if you want to send me a separate email, I'm happy to forward to our contacts over at Caltrain to get a more formal response on any questions that we have. And that goes with any other members of the committee or the public that are interested in having Caltrain answer specific questions.
I'll do that and I'd be happy to do it.
Are there any public comments or questions? Are there any other discussion items?
Yeah,
This
Alex,
topic
I want to make a
among members?
comment on the governance.
Jack
Sure.
Ringham, I got a comment.
Well, let's
Seems
let
to
Jim
me
go
that-
first.
I have known about this. The real key here is it's going to get ugly. It's definitely going to get ugly. San Francisco wants control to tie it into the transit hub up there, and San Jose wants control to take for Diridon Station. They want nothing to do with San Mateo County. We will lose whatever leverage we have to either one of these cities should this governance thing change. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Go ahead, Jack.
With all of this decrease in ridership, Caltrain is still running the same number of cars on the trains, most of which have empty seats in most of the cars most of the time. That's a waste of fuel. It's a waste of wear and tear on the cars. It's more noise, and it's stupid. So it seems to me that they ought to get their act together and have the train length. They've cut out trains, but they could cut down on the number of cars on the trains and run trains more frequently to provide better service. And the only thing, I don't think they'd have to change consists during the day. I think all they'd need to do is have a couple of 2-car consist trains that they could fit into the schedule and save a lot of money and a lot of noise and a lot of confusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Guys, excuse me, I'm going to step out for a minute.
No problem, Jim. Okay. Any more comments on 5C? If not, let's move on to 5D, the high-speed rail update.
Okay. Well, I'll kick this off by saying that we haven't had our regular monthly meetings with Caltrain and HSR over the last month or so. But they have, I believe, filed their business plan with the legislature. And they are continuing to work on the Central Valley portion of the project. We discussed previously the timelines for the EIR, so they're still working on that for the Northern California segment. Attached to the staff report and sent out to everybody separately were a couple of articles over the interceding time with regards to issues related to construction delays in the Central Valley, a lot of which have to do with right-of-way acquisition. And we have raised some concerns about right-of-way in the peninsula, that being that acquiring right-of-way and the associated costs are little more, going to be a little more challenging in developed areas as opposed to open farmland areas where they are currently experiencing problems. And the cost associated with the use here is going to be significantly more as well. I did also reach out to HSR, and they are willing and ready to make a presentation at our next meeting. And so with that, I'm going to open it up to the committee members. If you want to send me items that you would like them to cover in the presentation next time, you can either mention that now, or you can send me an email separately, and I'll be coordinating with our staff on the presentation for the next meeting.
Well,
Go ahead, Paul.
this is not a question, Robert, but I think it's an interesting situation. They're now talking about completing the Merced to Bakersfield route by the end of the decade in 2030, which means that the construction time for that 119 miles is 7 years to date, plus 9 years further. That's 16 years to put in that amount of line. And it's probably a more realistic estimate than the things they put in their reports, but it's just an appalling pace.
Okay.
Jack Wiggum with a comment.
Go ahead, Jack.
It seems to me that the way things are going, it looks as though there's never going to be a high-speed rail that connects San Francisco to Los Angeles. So we're going to have a high-speed rail that connects nowhere to nowhere for the most part. And I don't know why the legislature or somebody can't call a halt to this, because it's just a waste of taxpayer money. They'll never get sufficient ridership to avoid a deficit. So why not face up to reality? And they're not going to ever get enough money and approvals to get through the Tehachapi Mountains with high-speed rail. So why have it?
Thank you, Jack. Any other questions or comments from the public or from committee members?
Well, to Jack's comment, they're never gonna drop this thing because they keep getting the money from the feds and can put it out, so they're just not gonna do it. And I'll just tell you a story. I used to be a grower over in the valley, and I remember a cocktail party some number of years ago where all my friends over there were joking they could hardly wait to get in their pickups to ride to Madera to get on a train to go to Bakersfield. They were just really excited about that.
Oh my.
The rest of the country pays for it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've been having comments like this for as long as I can remember, well before I was on the committee. And you know, there's a ring of truth to it, but the project continues to go forward. Are there still opportunities for the town to be represented at hearings in Sacramento to make these comments, not just to each other, but to the legislature and the governor's office?
Well, I'm sure they know our position. It's just a matter of whether the position on the other side who want it to be built is something they'd rather side with, I guess you could say.
The big selling point they're using now is jobs, the number of jobs they've created in the valley, the small businesses they're helping out. That's their latest sales pitch to keep this thing going.
Yeah, there's a lot of people whose job is dependent on this project to keep going. So,
Right.
you know, it's
Well, I mean, and that's a plausible position to take. And then, you know, you may say, well, we shouldn't be in the business of creating jobs on a project that has no future, but jobs are jobs. But, you know, to the extent that politicians ever listen, are there people continuing to, I mean, there used to be a time when Paul and others and Rosemont would go to Sacramento and they would sit at these committee meetings and they'd make their voices heard. Now, I don't know, that made a hell of a lot of difference, but it seems to me that politicians ought to hear that kind of stuff.
We ought to at least communicate with the politicians that represent us. Because I think if there are enough representatives in the California legislature that are opposed to this, I think they could bring it to an end.
I have abandoned Anna Eshoo. I haven't voted for her for the last 3 or 4 elections because I tried to see her and present our case to her and she wouldn't listen. She wouldn't even answer a letter.
I do think in the state legislature, it's there are more and more skeptics, especially because they all see the transportation money could possibly be used for their own local projects in more realistic ways. So perhaps that may be the way that the high-speed rail funding dries up, but it's a long game.
No, I mean, I think Eshoo is probably not the right audience right now. I think the Biden administration is going to, you know, and I don't know how actively, but in principle, sort of support the project because of a jobs issue and because, you know, Biden rode the train from Delaware to Washington for half his life and he likes trains. I don't know why the hell they support it, but I think Sacramento is the place to you know, keep making a little bit of noise, and maybe there's no point in doing it anymore, but it seems to me that we used to do it and maybe we should continue.
Perhaps the next item will give us a way to affect the high-speed rail. It'll be the litigation update.
Okay.
But any other comments before we move on to 5E? Okay, let's move on to 5E.
Well, that
Is,
seems to be
you, Paul?
my project here. Nothing has happened. As you may remember, our last court appearance, which I attended, was a year ago last October. And right after that was a foregone conclusion when we walked into the courtroom. The judge didn't even pay any attention to what we had to say. He'd made up his mind to back the Attorney General from the outset. And that the appeal for that has been in and it's been awaiting a court date since then. We're now coming around to about 2 years wait for that. And the latest information we've had is that we may get a court date midsummer sometime. But there's nothing more encouraging than that, and it's been stalled before many times. My personal belief is that they're trying to stall it until they spend all the bond money, and then the outcome of the appeal will be moot.
Any questions or comments from the committee or the public on this? Okay. Should we move on to 5G?
F.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's mine actually. 5F, the
That's one way
Dumbarton.
to get out of it.
Yeah, we have so many items on the agenda. The Dumbarton Rail Corridor update. So about a few weeks ago, can't remember how long exactly, the contractor working to study the possible ways to restart the Dumbarton Rail Corridor provided the what they have is their alternatives analysis. So they've identified 4 options, and this alternatives analysis is something they're going to put in an eventual CEQA document. Although Facebook is not going to the CEQA level to fund that stage of the development. They've agreed to finish up this alternatives analysis and then stop there, and then it's up to Samtrans to find the funding and work out how to move forward from there. But they'll be able to use this alternatives analysis. And the 4 alternatives they identified were commuter rail, light rail, bus rapid transit, or autonomous vehicle transit. They're all pretty expensive. They're all in the billions, from 2.5 billion to about 3.3 billion. So obviously Samtrans is going to need a lot of outside funding, and it's probably going to have to be both state and federal. And just to give you a high level of the differences among all of them is that commuter rail is commuter rail is kind of like Caltrain, I think, and then light rail is more like what you see in I think on the VTA side, that's like more like light rail. And then there's bus rapid transit, which is just rubber wheeled buses going in the rail corridor up and down the Dumbarton corridor. And then they have something new called autonomous vehicle transit, AVT. And that's basically a bunch of kind of people movers that go along across Dumbarton, and you have, it's kind of pods. So you have like maybe, I think 6 to 8 people in each one that they can seat, and they're kind of coming continuously. So it's kind of very different from what you think as a typical transit system. It's also very new. They would not too many other places do it, and I don't think anyone else really does it at the scale that they are going to do it for transit. But those are kind of the options. In terms of, go ahead.
I wouldn't say that pod idea is new. Back in 1967, I was part of an exhaustive project to look at new ways of transportation, and we sorted through all those things.
That's correct. Perhaps I should have stated more clearly, what's new is applying this to a regional mass transit system. That's pretty new. The model they used as something they used to kind of figure out how would this type of system work is in West Virginia University, where they have one set up in Morgantown with the university. And so they kind of based what they expect to use for Dumbarton on that. But this would be at a much larger scale, obviously, because it's going across.
I did an evaluation of the Morgantown project, and that's not a good way to go.
Okay.
And on the cheap, the faculty member that was pushing it was a self-promoter. It's exceedingly light rail, and it's not very dependable. It's I wouldn't use that as an example. Your airport shuttle systems would be better examples.
Well, the contractor used it as the example, so I'm kind of forced to use it because I don't know of any other places, and they use that kind of as a model for what they were thinking of. But in any case, those are the 4 options that they're considering, and we'll hear more from them soon. In terms of how things would affect Atherton, they were initially thinking of having a Marsh Road station, but they've since eliminated that when they've done their modeling for ridership. The Marsh Road station was seen to have not a lot of riders, so they took that out. And all the 4 conveyance options don't include the Marsh Road station, just so that people know. Any questions?
Jack Ringham with a comment.
Sure.
I don't know how many dollars were involved, but all the money that had been set aside for Dumbarton Rail was given to BART. So and with no possibility, apparently, of ever getting it back. So they're starting from ground zero in funding. Yeah. And with all the ridership decline in Caltrain, to have Dumbarton Rail feed Caltrain, there's less of an argument for that. So I think the whole thing doesn't make any sense.
Well, they're hoping to connect with in the East Bay, BART, I think ACE, and one other major transit partner there. So they're trying to, there's certainly a lot of things they have to work on the East Bay because Samtrans only, I think, owns up to kind of the very edge of the right of way, and then the rest they have to figure out how to either acquire it from the rail operator on the East Bay side, or some kind of sharing agreement, or finding or they've modeled a different route that they could use for everything except the commuter rail. Okay, any other comments?
Alex,
What?
what do we see as this committee's role in this particular topic? Is it simply a matter of keeping Atherton and the council informed of what's going on, or do we have an opinion about the desirability of the whole thing? Should it happen, or what?
Oh, I think that's up for the committee members to decide individually. I don't think we have a formal position as a committee on this. It will affect Atherton in so much as the right of way for the Dumbarton Rail comes close to Lindenwood. And I think if I were living in Lindenwood, perhaps the horns on Marsh Road might be an issue. And perhaps even if people want to ride the new rail at a nearby rail station, like if there was a station at Marsh Road, that would be of interest to Athertonians if they wanted to ride the Caltrain from there. But other than that, I guess it's always been a topic. Scott used to follow this before I had joined the committee, and I've been following it since he's left. So I've been kind of the just has an interest in me, in my own interest in it. That's all. But the town, I don't think has a formal position on this.
I'll just put it, the town doesn't really have a formal position, but it's important to keep abreast of these kinds of things that are happening that may either affect us directly or are right outside of our border. So as the chair indicated, with regards to if there was a plan for a Marsh station, what that would do to, how that would impact the town. Eventually, there's likelihood discussion of impacts with regards to traffic on Marsh Road, if and when the item moves forward. And so as part of when the EIR comes out, I think that the two items that may be of interest to the town would be related to, as the chair said, noise and traffic impacts.
Yeah, I
Jack
believe.
Wiggum,
Go ahead, Jack.
I wonder, does the Citizens Advisory Committee on Dunbarton Rail still exist, or has that died? As Scott was our last member, I was on it for 7 or 8 years, and the committee accomplished nothing. I wonder if it still exists or if it's died a natural death.
I actually have not heard anything about it.
Sounds dead to me. I mean, I raised the question, I haven't spent any time thinking about potential effects on noise or traffic or anything else. But in principle, it seems to me that if the state is trying to find ways to let people live outside the Bay Area or a little further out in the Bay Area and to come to jobs in the Bay Area without increasing the road traffic, that the project in principle could have some merit. And I think it's important to look at it from both sides. I mean, of course, there are going to be effects that some people aren't going to like, but as a larger project, it seems to me there might be some benefit to the state and the communities as a whole.
Definitely. Any other comments or questions? If not, let's move on to 5G. So Malcolm was our long-term member, and also a long-term council member, and we were all sad to hear that he won't be with us anymore. So I wanted to see if ways that our committee could recognize his contributions to, I guess, specifically rail, since that's what we focus on, and just have a discussion around that. And if you have any remembrances of him that feel free to share? Just want to open it up to anyone who wants to talk
Yeah,
about it,
this
and
is
we can
Jim
decide what we
Massey.
want to
I'll
do.
start.
Go ahead, Jim.
Malcolm Dudley and I, in 40 years, very rarely agreed on anything, starting with the Memorial Malcolm swimming pool when Dee Dee Fisher, Councilwoman Fisher, and I wanted a skeet field. In 40 years, he did great service for this town, particularly with the rail situation, his terms as mayor, and I thanked him privately and publicly for his service. One thing I want to say that you may or may not know, some of you, I don't know how far back you guys go, but the Transportation Authority in Sacramento, 40 years ago, wanted to widen Marsh Road, widen Atherton Avenue, and create a path to 280. It's not very well known, but Malcolm was instrumental in blocking that. So anything we can do to provide recognition for him, I'm all for. That's what I've got to say. He did great things for this town, was always involved, and like I said, he and I didn't agree, and we both joked about it, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he did great things for this town. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you,
Well,
Jim.
I think he was the longest serving council member that the town ever had. I don't go back
Yes, he
far
was.
enough
Yeah.
to check that out, but I'm pretty sure, at least in the time I've lived here, he was on the council for almost 20 years.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. He was 20 years. He was the longest serving member in this community.
Paul?
He was also instrumental in the purchase of the Caltrain right of way. He played a key role
He
in
was
that.
he was major. I'm going to interrupt. He was major in doing that. That was just
Yes.
what he did was just amazing there.
And he was probably also a charter member of the rail committee. I'm not sure when the rail committee started, but I'd be amazed if he hadn't been there then.
So I've got
So,
another question. Do we
Yep.
know if the town is planning anything in the way of a commemorative thing for him or a special event or anything of that type? Do we know anything about that? Because if we do, then we should be involved and support that.
Yeah, well, I do know that the council did adjourn a meeting in his memory after
Right.
he passed. I don't know of any official event or anything
Okay.
with regards to
Right,
that.
thank you.
But I think we have an opportunity to discuss the potential ways to recognize either from the rail committee directly or to make a recommendation towards the council. And so in tonight's agenda, if there are folks that are interested in participating in a subcommittee as to how to recognize Malcolm Dudley, I think it's within the scope of the agenda item.
I may have this story wrong, so Robert, if I do, correct me. But I have coffee and donuts with Rick DeGolia from time to time. And I think what I understood from one of our recent conversations is that as part of the new town center, there is going to be a place or a wall. And I'm not talking about the donors wall where the list of people who have given a lot of money or some amount of money get listed, but a separate wall, which is sort of, plaques of gratitude or whatever to people who have done a lot for the town. Now, if I've got that story right, Malcolm's plaque ought to be really big and really special. And we could feed, and I think Paul or Jim's point of saying, as the rail committee, we should be feeding information to whoever is creating the information that's going to go on that memorial or plaque or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, what I do know is that there was discussion of what they were terming the legends of Atherton.
Yes, that's the phrase. I couldn't remember that, but
Okay,
yes, that's
and
what Rick used.
so I don't know that there's a strict definition of what legends are, but there is the intent to recognize um, certain members of the community for whether you call it
I got a call.
to the town or society or in recognition of accomplishments that they've made.
Yes.
And so that is certainly an opportunity for discussion. Um,
Well, would not Rosemary's plaque go on that?
Well, it might, but I mean, Rosemary's contribution to the town of Atherton, I don't mean to diminish them because I lived with them for many years, but compared to Malcolm's, they're
Well, yeah, I know, but it's
a
still,
much smaller plaque is all I'm saying. I think Malcolm is really special in this context.
well, we're happy to give him a big one, but let's get Rosemary in there.
Yeah, well, this came up, as you might expect, in a context of a question that I posed to Rick about, hey, whatever's going to happen with this plaque?
Yeah,
We originally were going to put it on the station, and then
right.
Caltrain wouldn't let us. Well, now we could still put it on the station, but Rick said, well, there's going to be this Legends of Atherton thing. Now, whether Rosemary's plaque should be there or not, I'm not the one to comment, but there is going to be such a wall apparently.
Mhm.
And in the context of this discussion about Malcolm, I think we should be at a minimum sort of presenting comments or information that would contribute to that.
I think that's the purpose of the subcommittee, is to look at different ways we can recognize Malcolm, whether it's something in the Legends of Atherton or perhaps something, now that the town is leasing the rail station right behind me here, perhaps we could do something for Malcolm there that's a little more than just a plaque, perhaps, because he's been associated with rail for so long, and the town kind of is a good meeting place for him there. So I guess that's something for the subcommittee to kind of work through and then come back with a proposal, and then we can then decide as a committee what to recommend to council.
Robert, can you shed any light on the status or thinking about this so-called Legends of Atherton thing? I mean, is that a going project, or are people just kind of tossing it around?
Well, I'll answer in two parts. So the first, I'll talk about the station. So now that we've acquired it, or we're finalizing the acquisition of the maintenance and use rights of the station. One of the things that we have the money for is basically how to dress up the building, potentially reconfigure it so that it faces the town hall versus the new fence that's installed. And so we're going to have some opportunities to look at how we can better integrate the station building into the town center. As part of that, there's the potential of adding some recognition stuff. And I think at one of the recent council meetings, they were talking about the Legends of Atherton, and they were discussing whether or not it would be in the library, in the historic chambers, or potentially even out at the station building. So they haven't yet fully flushed out where and how that'll be done, but there is a desire for having that space. So it's not been fully vetted yet how and where and what it'll look like, but it is something that's under current conversations at the council level.
Has it been an agenda item for the council?
It has on several occasions. And so I think right now, one of the items that they've been focusing on is the overall donor wall for the town center project. And they have a subcommittee assigned to working that out, and that has come to council with a couple of ideas to get feedback on, so it'll get fleshed out further. And my guess is that in the not too distant future, there'll be a subcommittee assigned to developing that legends a bit further.
Oh, well, the donor wall is really a separate issue. I mean,
No, I understand that, but I'm saying in
write a
terms
big
of
check doesn't
priority.
make you a legend of Atherton.
Yeah. So, but what I was getting at is the council has kind of where they've set their priority focus.
Yeah.
And so that recognition wall is up at the top of their list, and that's being flushed out currently. And my guess is that the legends is an upcoming conversation in the not too distant future.
Okay. Oh, one other
I
thing.
think one of the things I might consider is naming a street after him. They named Dinkelspiel Lane after a noted council member.
Yeah, I was just about to make that same. I never met Dinkelspiel, but he apparently was a Malcolm Dudley kind of guy, and he got a street named after him. So maybe there could
Well,
be.
they are creating a new street near connecting to Dinkelspiel, so maybe they could connect Dudley and
That's the one that
Dinkelspiel.
goes from Ashfield out to Fair Oaks. But again, these are things that the subcommittee can talk about and come up with a list or ideas for discussion at a future committee meeting.
Are there any volunteers that want to be on this committee? I'm looking for 2 to 3 people.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Well,
I would be willing to help out, but if I have to do it on Zoom or any of these type of meetings, count me out. If we could do something in person, I would be willing to do that. I go down to John's house.
The subcommittee is welcome to meet in any which way they would like.
you can all meet on my patio if you want, and you can listen to the trains go by.
Right. Listen to that guy blow the whistle.
Yeah, in principle, I'm willing to help, but there are people here who have known Malcolm for a lot longer and know more about his contributions than I do. So if you just want another name, I'm not just another name. If you want me on the subcommittee, I'm willing to do it, but I don't know that I can contribute the sorts of things that Paul and Jim can.
Well, I think the thrust of the subcommittee would be to access the council and find out what their plans are on this legend thing and see how we might be able to fit in. I don't know if you guys agree with me with that, but right now it's kind of sketchy. We need to see what they're thinking, and then we can maybe add on to that. I mean, I liked Alex's idea of a street name, but he definitely has to be a larger plaque than, other people, that's all.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
Okay.
Okay, so Paul and Jim, and
Yeah,
it's up to
potentially.
John if he wants to also be part of it. 2
Okay.
to 3 people is fine. John, did you
Okay.
want to join formally or?
Okay, I'll be on it, but just understand that the kind of, I mean, maybe my contribution is to have another cup of coffee with Rick and find out what's going on with the legends thing. Or I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, that'll
Exactly.
be part of the research. Yeah. And then, yeah, based on that, come up with
I don't know
what you guys
about
think
Jack?
is
Jack,
best.
You've known people longer than most of us.
Myself?
I think
Jack,
Jim
Jack.
Jansen
Oh, Jack.
isn't
Oh,
here
Jack. Yes.
Yeah.
would
So
probably be interested in joining because he shared the council with him. They overlapped on councils
that's
for quite
true.
a few years.
That's good.
Okay.
Since there's I guess there'll be 3 committee members on it. You're welcome to also contact Jim Jans. Since that's only 4, as long as you don't bring a 5th member in, that won't be a majority. So you guys should be okay.
Well, if you'd like, I can reach out to Jim separately to see if he's interested in participating
Yeah.
in that, and we can go from there. And I'll reach out to the members of the committee outside probably next week to set up a conversation. We certainly have enough space at the park for a socially distanced meeting. And we can set something up.
I serve better wine on my patio than you're going to serve in the park, Robert.
Yeah, I would think meeting around lunch or something would be preferable to just sitting around in the park.
Okay, we'll figure something out.
Okay, any other comments on this item before we move on to item 6? Okay, moving on, item 6, committee and staff member comments. Are there any comments that anyone has? So I had one additional comment. I probably should have brought this up during the Caltrain item, but forgot about it. Caltrain's doing a grade separation study this year for all 41 of its at-grade crossings between San Francisco and San Jose. And that certainly means they'll be studying ones in Atherton. So that will be done this year. They're spending about $5 million to do it. Let me correct myself. It's starting this year. They're spending 5 million and it'll take multiple years to complete. Not sure why it's taking so long just to do the study, but that's what I've been told. So just to let you guys know, that's something they're looking at, and just studying all the at-grade crossings and planning for future grade separation. Where the money comes from to actually do the grade separation and which ones get done first is always the bigger question, but they're at least looking at doing them in the future. So this is just part one of that, of a very long.
Well, Palo Alto and Menlo Park have been looking at that for a long time already.
Yes, although those were initiated by the towns, the cities
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
So this is a very slow-moving, long-lasting project.
Not very high speed.
Seems to me that Palo Alto has come close to making some sort of at least an interim recommendation. There's been stuff about this in the Post and the Palo Alto Weekly and all that.
Yeah, they have a committee called the XCAP that was a citizens committee, and they had been meeting for a number of years now to make recommendations on what to do with all of Palo Alto's at-grade crossings. And none of the recommendations were wildly popular. They all had trade-offs. The recommendations, they all shied away from the most expensive options, which is, bury the rail line. But that kind of left the residents somewhat unhappy with the remaining options. So they're still kind of, the council's still not sure which one to adopt because none are clearly popular with majority of residents. And of course, they didn't even touch the Palo Alto Avenue's crossing, because whatever they do there is going to be tied into downtown, and they'll have to cooperate with Menlo Park to figure out what they're going to do with that and how that ties into the Palo Alto Avenue crossing.
Yeah, it's just one more reason why they shouldn't run high-speed rail up the peninsula. It's just crazy.
Any other comments from committee members? If not, I'll open up public comment again. If there's no public comment, future agenda items. So I guess June, is everyone okay with the high-speed rail authority providing an update for us?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I think his name is Boris. We'll see Boris again.
Oh, boy.
And then our next meeting will be June 1st when we'll see him.
I suppose there ought to be an update on the Malcolm Dudley's recommendation.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we should have a Malcolm Dudley update, a memorial update on there too.
How about an update on Caltrain electrification? Is that likely to be provide any illumination that would be useful?
Are you talking about a presentation from Caltrain on that?
Well, an opportunity to discuss all the issues that keep getting swept under the carpet, like the one I raised about constant warning time.
Okay. Are you talking an internal, just a meeting conversation, or are you talking with Caltrain?
We need to have Caltrain input on that.
Okay, I'll see when I can try and set that up.
Yeah, if high-speed rail is coming next
We
2
can
months.
move Caltrain back to the next one.
Yeah.
It's not essential that we do it now, but these projects are moving so quickly, 2 or 4 months.
Robert, did you have something to say about the grand jury report or something, or?
Oh, no, I was just, I sent you a message that I think that that study is an offshoot of the grand jury report that came out about Caltrain studying its crossings
Oh,
as
okay.
a system as opposed to each city looking at.
Oh,
it.
yeah, to centralize it, and yeah, it does make more sense for Caltrain to do the study rather than each city individually doing it. They can get more economies of scale and doing it, of course. So with that, we are on number 10. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, well,
Thank
I'll
you.
see you guys in June.
Okay,
Be
thanks
safe.
all.
This
Good meeting.
is
Oh.
Ophelia.
Hi, Ophelia.
Yeah, hi. I didn't attend the meeting before, and but in the beginning, I heard something probably talking about Watkins Avenue platform, because I live in a Watkins Avenue. So I have a question for Robert. Are you possible give me, because I don't want to waste too many people time. It's possible I have a little bit more information what they plan to do?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ophelia. Okay, I'll see you all in
Okay,
June.
thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
June.
Here.